Why do some memories stay with us forever? How is it possible that a simple glance, a tone of voice, or even a scent can instantly transport us back in time, reminding us of moments we'd rather forget? And what if childhood experiences aren't just distant episodes, but shadows that silently shape every reaction, every fear, and every relationship? Childhood trauma is not just unpleasant memories. It's an invisible mark left in the mind and body, determining how we perceive the world and ourselves. As the renowned psychiatrist and trauma expert Bessel van der Kolk said, "The body remembers everything," implying that our experiences don't just stay in our memory, they repeatedly shape our lives. Why do our reactions sometimes seem excessive? Or why does happiness always seem to slip away? Perhaps it's time to look back, not to relive the pain, but to understand it. In this video, we'll explore how childhood trauma forms, how it affects the mind and body, and most importantly, how we can begin to free ourselves from its grip. When we hear the word trauma, large-scale catastrophes like wars, natural disasters, and tragedies often come to mind. However, childhood trauma doesn't always manifest so obviously. Sometimes it hides in small gestures of indifference, in the silence of those who should have protected us, in words that made us doubt our own worth. Childhood trauma arises when an experience is too overwhelming for a child's mind and heart to process. It can be caused by physical, emotional, or sexual abuse, neglect, abandonment, or even an unstable family environment, where parents, caught in their own trauma, can't provide emotional security. And here's the painful truth. It's not just what happened to the child that hurts, but also what should have happened but never did. Imagine a child growing up in an environment where love is conditional, where care is always accompanied by criticism, where silence replaces words of encouragement. This child might have no visible scars, but deep within, hidden wounds remain, buried alive, and over time, they return in even more destructive forms. Trauma doesn't disappear. It hides, transforms, and finds new ways to manifest. Some children become anxious, always expecting the worst, living in constant alertness, as if danger could strike at any moment. Others learn from adults who can't name their emotions because feeling was never safe for them. Some strive for total control over their lives, trying to make sure they'll never be helpless again, while others unconsciously repeat familiar scenarios, recreating the atmosphere of their childhood. This is the core tragedy of childhood trauma. It doesn't just affect the past, it steals the future. Without even realizing it, we carry childhood fears into adult relationships. We can become people who never feel good enough, who fear intimacy, who destroy their own happiness over and over again. We can spend our lives running from things we can't even name. But here's what's important to remember. Trauma is not a life sentence. What happened to us influenced who we are. But it doesn't have to define our future. The first step is to see it. The second is to understand it. And the third, the hardest step of all, is to believe that healing is possible. So how exactly does childhood trauma affect the body and mind? If the body truly remembers everything, what does that mean for us? The answer to this question could completely change the way you see yourself. Childhood trauma is not just a painful memory hidden deep in the mind. It becomes part of the body, embedding itself into the biology of the person who experienced it. This is not an exaggeration. A difficult childhood can physically change every thought, every reaction, and every subsequent decision. A child growing up in an unstable or threatening environment is constantly in a state of anxiety. Their nervous system adapts to survival, putting the body into fight or flight mode. This means that even when real danger no longer exists, the threat still does. The heart starts racing, muscles tense, breathing becomes shallow and intermittent. The scariest part is that this biological program doesn't disappear on its own. It can remain active for decades, showing up as chronic anxiety, panic attacks, insomnia, or even autoimmune diseases. Modern neurobiology has shown that childhood trauma directly affects the structure of the brain. The amygdala, responsible for fear, becomes hyperactive. The hippocampus, which processes memories, can shrink in size. The frontal cortex, which helps us make rational decisions, starts to function less efficiently. This is why adults who experience trauma often have uncontrollable emotions or struggle to trust others. And it's not just the psyche. The body also stores the effects of trauma. As psychiatrist and researcher Bessel van der Kolk explains, trauma isn't just a story from the past. It continues to live in the present, in the body, in the breath, in our reactions to the world around us. Many adults who suffered childhood trauma struggle with chronic digestive problems or inexplicable fatigue. Trauma shows up where it can, finding any possible way to express itself. That's why saying things like, "just forget about it," or "it's time to move on," ignores the depth of the issue. This pain doesn't go away with time, and it doesn't leave with sheer willpower. It needs to be acknowledged, lived through, and released. But there is hope. The human brain has neuroplasticity, the ability to reorganize itself. With the right therapeutic tools, emotional regulation techniques, and body work, many of the effects of trauma can be reversed. A person's history of childhood suffering doesn't have to end in pain. Suffering can turn into strength. Wounds can become doors to inner growth. But why do traumas get passed down from generation to generation? If we grew up in an environment of pain, how do we break the cycle and not pass it on? Childhood trauma doesn't just affect the person who experienced it. It spreads, moving from generation to generation like a shadow, unseen but very real. Children of traumatized parents often absorb unhealthy behavior patterns, repeating stories that began with them. But if no one chooses to be wounded, why do so many people unknowingly pass on this pain? A child growing up in an environment where love is conditional, where their feelings are ignored or devalued, quickly learns that the world is an unsafe place. Instead of developing healthy self-esteem and confidence, the child adapts to survive. Some become perfectionists, believing that if they are perfect, they will earn love. Others shut down their emotions to avoid the pain of rejection. Some unconsciously repeat what they saw in childhood, bringing these same wounds into their future relationships. The traumatic cycle continues, because children learn not just from words, but from their surroundings. If a father never knew love, he may not be able to express it to his children. A mother who grew up with constant criticism may pass her fears and insecurities onto the next generation. As Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Studies show that trauma can be inherited, altering the activity of certain genes. This means that the consequences of a difficult childhood can even affect the children of those who suffered pain, influencing their stress levels, mental health, and even susceptibility to certain diseases. But this cycle can be broken. Awareness of our own history is the first step to healing. When we notice destructive behavior patterns and consciously begin to seek healing through therapy, deep self-reflection, or rethinking our beliefs, we can not only change our lives but also create a new future for the generations to come. Trauma may be passed down, but healing can be passed down as well. Breaking this cycle takes courage, but it's one of the most powerful acts of inner transformation. Overcoming childhood trauma is a process, not a destination. There will be easy days and hard ones, moments of breakthrough and setbacks. But with each step forward, with each new awareness inside, the past may have shaped us, but it doesn't have to define our future. True freedom begins when we stop running from our history and consciously choose how it will unfold. Childhood traumas may leave deep scars, affecting how we see ourselves, others, and the world. They teach us from a young age to doubt our worth and see threats where there are none. And often, we carry these lessons through life, not even realizing they no longer belong to us. But here's the truth that's rarely spoken. What happened to you doesn't define who you are. Your past may have been filled with pain, but your future is in your hands. It's about turning that pain into strength. Yes, it can be painful, but it doesn't have to be permanent. There's one thing that neuroscience, psychology, and even philosophy teach us. Humans are capable of change. The brain can be rewired. The body can heal. The mind can find new meaning in its own story. As the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl said, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." Healing from childhood trauma doesn't mean forgetting the past. It means learning to live with it in a way that no longer controls us. It's a difficult truth, but it's real, and it's necessary. No one should spend their life running from what's already happened. The past can't be changed, but the present can, and therefore, the future can be rebuilt. Now the question is, are you ready to take the first step? If you've reached this point, it means this material resonated with you. Perhaps because you haven't felt it before, or because you know someone carrying these invisible wounds, or maybe it's something else. Each of us carries unresolved emotional pain that continues to influence our lives, even if we try to ignore it. Talking about trauma isn't easy. Listening to it is even harder. But there is something truly powerful in acknowledging your pain, in facing what many run from, in having the courage to look within and confront what has remained hidden for so long. This is the first and most important step toward healing. And if there's one thought I want to leave with you after this video, it's this: you are not alone. Whatever your path may be, you have the opportunity to rewrite your story. There are ways to break the cycle and find new meaning in what has happened. Pain can be part of your life, but it doesn't have to become your fate. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this conversation. If this video was helpful to you, share your thoughts in the comments. You never know who your words might help at just the right moment. And before you go, remember that we have other videos on this channel that can help you better understand yourself, your emotions, and the path to inner healing. Pick one and continue your journey to yourself. See you soon.